Hello, my sweet little noodles. My name is Brittany, and welcome back to my channel. Today, we'll be doing a young adult fantasy reading vlog.
It's Brittany, bitch.
I've wanted to read both of these books for a very long time, and I have actually on separate occasions gotten the book from the library and just never attempted the book. I'm just very intimidated by these books. I think it's because they've also been hyped up for such a long time, but if I don't like them, I'm gonna be really upset. I think you guys can understand that whenever you hype up a book for so many years, you just like expect it to be super good, but I'm very intimidated by fantasy in general. I used to read the shit out of it in high school, but along the way, I just kind of like lost my vibe for fantasy. I think it's just because I listen to a lot of stuff on audio and it's harder to grasp fantasy and sci-fi concepts on audio versions versus reading them physically. And I don't always have time to read physically. And even if I do read them physically, it's on an ebook. And I just feel like fantasy books sometimes feel better in the physical sense. I think I'm probably just crazy. But I am incredibly excited to get into these and I hope they're as good as I think they are. I will be reading The Gilded Ones, and this is a very anticipated book, and it is basically about these girls who have to do a blood ceremony. If they bleed gold, something is wrong with them. I don't know much else, but I did read the first chapter of this and it's very like The Handmaid's Tale-esque. It's really giving me those vibes where like the girls are not deemed worthy. They were not what is wrong with me? They were not deemed worthy if they like show parts of their face, that kind of thing. It's very Handmaid's Tale. So I'm really excited to get into this bad boy. I also have this on audio, so I'm not really sure which version I'm gonna attempt because I read the first chapter, I really enjoyed it physically, but obviously for time's sake, audio is always really helpful because I can at least listen during work, and work has just been kind of stressful and long lately. So if I can somehow listen to something at work, I'm gonna do it. And I will also be reading Legendborn, and little did I know that this took place in North Carolina because I now live here and I really had no idea. But I also read the first chapter of this bad boy, and to my knowledge, this book is about secret societies called the Legendborn who hunt down these mythical creatures, and it's very like Arthurian. So I'm not sure really what to expect, but the first chapter was really good. Like it was, I think it was the prologue technically. It really captured me, and I don't have this one on audio. I mean, I'm waiting for the audio. I mean, it could come in, but I mean, it still says it's 4 weeks out, so I doubt it. And again, I don't really know how I feel about fantasy on audio. I just feel like it's something that I prefer to read physically. But I do have the ebook version of this because I actually returned this bad bitch to the library in like 4 days. So I'm gonna go ahead and probably return this physical copy to the library whenever my time is up, and then I'll continue on the ebook version. I'm really excited for both of these, but I just don't know which one I'm gonna pick up first. I really don't know. I loved reading a chapter of each one of these books, and they each have a very different vibe, but they're both very intriguing. And I really just don't know which one I feel like reading more, but it might have to be Legendborn just because I kind of feel more pressure because I have to return this book a lot sooner, and I have the ebook version so I could read it at night. So it might be this one. And I'll let you guys know which one I pick up in the next clip, but it's probably gonna be this one.
I'm at a house in town with cars in the front. You probably hear the sound from the roof above. I know we only just met, but this could be fun. You should come, yeah, you should come. 'Cause there's a room.
So I'm now here many weeks later to finally inform you that I am now 50% of the way into Legendborn. And this is the novel I decided to end up going with because I was kind of reading both of them interchangeably, a couple chapters each, just kind of see which one I wanted to go with. And honestly, they were both so intriguing, I kind of couldn't choose. But the universe chose for me because the Gilded Ones, I had to return. So I'm here with Legendborn first. I don't even know what I want to say about this book at this point. I really don't know, other than I'm really enjoying it. It's a 5-star so far. I don't have any complaints. There's so much complex plot. I honestly don't know what to tell you, and it's so hard for me to describe, but I'm gonna try. Legendborn, first of all, takes place where I live in North Carolina, and it's like 30-40 minutes away from me, so that's pretty cool. I technically could go visit where they're talking about. Our main character, Bree, is suffering the grief of losing her mother at the beginning of this book. Something happened with her mother. It was a freak accident, and now many months later, she got accepted into like an accelerated program in high school where she can go to school at the local college, which is like UNC. And when she gets there with her best friend, Alice, who's also in the program, they end up going to like Eno State Park, and they're there after dark, and Bree sees something she shouldn't have, something magical that she doesn't know and can't explain, but only she can see. And the person involved is like, how can you see this? Like, how can you see this ether? And she's like, what do you mean? So Bree is special because she can see ether, which is a special type of magic for Legendborn. Now, this whole thing basically revolves around the old tales of Arthur and the Round Table. So Bree ends up finding out that these students are part of like a secret society. These kids go back generations of being in this like order. And I do not have the knowledge to describe to you exactly how this order works, even though it is well laid out. It's not confusing per se. I just feel like I'm gonna explain it wrong. But basically, these kids are all descendants from century-old lines, and they're basically here to protect humans from Shadowborn, which are basically demons. So when these demons get powerful enough using ether, which is that magic, they can siphon ether to become corporeal, and that's when they can actually truly hurt like human beings. Now, how this all fits together with her mother's murder is what's a really fascinating concept, but basically Bree begins to unfurl the fact that her mother was somehow involved with this and we don't know how. So somehow her mother knew about it, or she saw an event happen. Something happened to where her mother knew about this. I don't want to say too much, but basically Bree's mother is somehow involved and we really don't know how, and that's the whole reason Bree's doing this. So she's basically pledging herself to the order. So a lot of this book is her like taking part in trials, because she is working with, he's called a scion, his name is Nick. He is basically like the top dog, and you have to like pledge your life to these people and fight for them. So if they get called in the line, then you have to help them fight. And basically what seems to be able to happen is that like people from centuries ago can like use their bodies. I could be wrong, but that's kind of what it seems like, is whenever they call on you, like you are now connected to that ancestor, and you're usually called upon because there's like a demon uprising or whatever. So once they reach that level, almost all of them will be like awakened, and then all of these other people who are pledged to them need to help them fight against demons. So that's basically Bree's job. She is a page trying to be his squire. I don't know. I'm not very good with those medieval terms, and there's a lot of that stuff in here. So, am I confused? Not necessarily, but like I just can't describe it, okay? Like I am just not this knowledgeable. Anyway, so far my favorite part has actually been finding out more about Bree's history. So we basically come to realize that Bree's mother may have been involved with a different type of magic where the women use root, and it's rooted in like slavery and racism. Basically all this is about slavery and racism, by the way. It's a very interesting concept that I don't really want to ruin for you, but it is just so fascinating how well done the racism is in this book. And it's talking about how these women who use root, so they use like magic, but they use it on behalf of their ancestors. Like they ask permission from their ancestors to use their magic to like heal people or fix a situation or whatever. These are like root practitioners, and so they use ether, but they call it something else, and it's not a constant thing. So people in the like the Legendborn society, they can constantly use ether. They don't have to like ask their ancestors permission because they are like oath required through bloodline. It's just different, but it's very interesting to see the comparisons between the two types of magic. And we don't really know much about root specifically. We still don't even really truly know how ether works either, but they're the same exact thing. They just call them differently and they use it differently. And it seems that root comes from Black women and their lineage. And it's just really interesting to see how this is being done. And it's being done so well. And there's a lot of inclusive language in here. There's a character who was a they, them. And it just was apparent from the very first paragraph with this person in it that they are a they. And I just really appreciated that. It wasn't actually a full ass conversation. Nothing happened. It was like our character immediately started using that language because that's what we're supposed to know. I just love that. So far, this book is a 5. Like, I'm really enjoying it. It's so good. I feel like I'm not even explaining it properly because there's so many good plot points to this. There's so many nuances. I'm just really impressed with how the racism has been done so far in this book. It perfectly weaves in true real life depictions of everyday racism. And it also goes back to slavery, how that has impacted people. It is just very interesting, and it's really making an interesting story even more interesting because it's adding so much depth and nuance to the situation. I can't even properly explain everything. I just highly suggest this moment you go read this book because I could be wrong, but I think this may be one of my next 5 stars of the year. It's so good. It's so rich. And honestly, I've taken my time reading this. It's been about 3 weeks. Like I've been slowly reading this at night because I guess it is like 500 pages, but I've been taking my time with it and trying to digest it because I also don't want to miss anything, but it is not boring by any means, but it did start off a little bit slow and now it is picking up at a really high speed. Going off the rail, we're getting some really interesting fast shit all at once. I feel like once you get past like the 40% mark, it's just kind of like getting more and more tumultuous, and I'm very interested to see how this is going to turn out. So I'll let you guys know when I finish this, but so far it's just really good. It's good shit. This is what I talk about when I say that I like and dislike reading YA fantasy because I feel like it's always one of my favorite things to read. It's always a 5 star, but there's so much depth in so many of these books. There's so much cultural world building that it does take me a little bit longer to get into. And it's not like I'm having a hard time getting into the book. It's just that I'm really trying to make sure I fully understand what's going on. And so far I'm getting it. Everything's making sense. And I don't want to ruin a lot of the plot points for you because there's so many little surprises in here, so many little plot twists that I don't want to ruin it for you. But some of these characters are like literal fire. It's so interesting. There's obviously a romance going on between Nick and Bree, but it's obvious that they are becoming more romantic. And I'm really down here for that. So I'll let you guys know when I finish it and my full thoughts, but it might be another 10-minute video. I don't know. There's just a lot going on with this book, but I really don't want to spoil it for you. Like there's so many cool little things in here that I feel like if I said it, it probably would make you want to read it, but I also don't want to like color what you think of the actual book or ruin a surprise, because I like surprises that are ruined because it makes you want to read books, but a lot of people don't. So I'll get back to you guys later. Bye.
Tears fall at last. I see my past like it's still around. But am I happy now? Am I happy now? Are you happy now?
All right, y'all, we need to chat because I ended up finishing Legendborn like over a month ago and I still have not talked about it. So let's have a chat. And this book is gonna get a surprising 5 stars out of me. I feel like any less is just disrespectful because this book was so fucking well done. It is so well crafted that any less is just a fucking offense. To sum this up in a non-spoilery way, we have our main character Bree, who's only 16, and she's in an advanced placement kind of program at the nearby college, which is UNC, which is also the school that her mother went to and I believe was a professor at. Now, Bree lost her mother 3 months ago, okay? So that is a very important part of the story because on the first night at UNC, she sees a magical attack and doesn't realize that's what it is. And there is a Merlin who tries to mesmer her, which is basically make her forget what happened. And she fights the mesmer and remembers. And then she kind of connects the dots that the same thing happened when her mother died. So she knows that somehow her mother is connected to the Legendborn, which is a secret society on campus. And all this kind of swirls around Arthurian legend. And it also adds in really important modern day racism and also slavery. This book is so fucking nuanced and I cannot even tell you everything without ruining the plot of this book, but everything is fucking connected. It is so fucking good. And I'm not really even interested in like Arthurian legend. It's not really a thing that I particularly care about. I mean, I had to study it in college because I was an English major and I still was like not a big fan. Like, I think it's like, cool, but like it wasn't really an enticing part of this. I just heard so many good things about this book that I gave it a shot. And I'm really glad that I did because the ending was fucking batshit. It was good. It wrapped up a lot of my questions, but also gave me some new ones. And I want to see how things are going to play out. Most of this book is Bree just trying to find out what happened with her mother's death. And we get to find out. And it is just fucking heartbreaking. Like this whole story is so deep and intrinsic to like human nature. And it is just so good. I think the real strength of this is that this is set in modern day North Carolina where I live. And she faces so much racism in so many small ways that people would think are minute and not important, but like they're completely important, especially to like, you know, people. But number 2, to the plot of the story. It is just so, it's so good. And I just love that this is an epic YA fantasy that can like deal with these heavy topics and actually interweave them into the plot and the storyline without making it feel like an afterthought. Like that is such a rare quality in a writer to be able to perfectly craft your stories so that everything connects and makes sense and is like pertinent to the plot. Like we're not having these random ass conversations that don't have any sense for the entire story. I mean, of course, there are like some characters that like there's too many or whatever, but I feel like the pros outweigh the cons here. This book is so freaking deep, and I cried more throughout this than I cried in like other books that were intending to make people cry. Like this book really hit the nail on the head. But I do have like some very small complaints, and one of those is there are way too many side characters to remember, and the lineage of all the people is just way too confusing to follow. Like I finished the book and I read it as slowly as I could, and I still cannot understand fully like how the lineage system works. Like, is the squire above a page? And then how do they get there? And why are they called scions? And why is it? It's a whole thing. I don't understand the whole system and the whole magic system yet, but I think we're gonna hopefully get there. Because I know this is a duology, so there is a second book called Bloodmarked, I believe. And I'll definitely be reading that, probably next year. And also, most of the story really is about her trying to uncover her mother's death, which I think was a really good plot point, but it was definitely a tad too long for that to be like the main plot point, because at the very end, we get so many other like points of plot that we're like, oh, okay, that's where this was going. But the first 100 pages are really slow, and I don't mind a slow starting book, but yeah, it was a little difficult to get through because you're just like trying to understand the payoff for this. Once it gets there. Overall, this was like the most impressive YA read I've read in a really, really long time, and I really hope that the Gilded ones can also impress me. Now, I already spoiled a little bit in my last clip, so I'm not gonna go any further, but like, let me just tell you, please just give this a shot. Even if this does not sound that enticing, like, I just challenge you to try reading this and read to at least the halfway mark, okay? Like, just give it a shot. I know it starts out a little bit slow, but this book gets so fucking good, and it is so much fun. Also, this book is definitely gonna go on my best books of 2023 because there's very few 5 stars I've actually given out this year, and I think it deserves it. But now on to what is hopefully another 5-star, which is the Gilded ones. And I just started this book. I'm about 10% in, and so far I have a lot of questions. There are apparently 3 books in this series, so if I do like this book, we have a lot to go through. But basically, this book is about our 16-year-old main character, Decca, who is terrified of this like blood ceremony. And in this blood ceremony, like if your blood turns gold, you're like a demon. And they basically bleed the girls and cut them to ensure that they're pure, which means like red blood. If they are a golden blood, it means that they are a demon. Now, I don't understand this world fully, but I can tell you up to like chapter 3 that the blood ceremony happens. And during the blood ceremony, like one girl gets cut and she bleeds red. And then all of a sudden these like weird ghosty thingies, I don't remember what they're called, they come in, and Decca finds out that she can like control them with her mind. And all of a sudden her blood turns gold and she's a demon, I guess. And then she is like tortured like repeatedly and killed repeatedly. So I would keep that in mind. This is kind of like not, it's not the book I was expecting. It starts off a little rough. Like they basically try killing her in every which way to kill a demon. And whenever she resists all of the attempts, she's somehow found by this person who's going to take her to be trained in like a demon army. So these girls who become demons are like incredibly valuable at fighting off those weird like wraith like things. I don't know what they're called. I'll put it on the screen here. I cannot remember for the life of me. Even I like just read this last night, but they are needed to fight those things. And Decca did not know her entire life that like it's kind of an honor to be a demon and like people are afraid of you for like a good reason, because you're now like kind of like an eternal being or something. She's basically immortal at this point. Like she is one of like the immortal ones who like cannot be killed so far, and they don't know how to kill her because she has been like beheaded and everything, and her everything grows back together. And that's really hard to read, like her being murdered so many times. So just keep that in mind. That was a little rough emotionally for me. But now she's being taken on this trip with another girl named Britta, who has like a Scottish accent, I'm assuming, because that's how it's written on the page. And for them in her part of the world, it's very different. Like her parents already knew that it was happening because she kept getting gold in her menses, which was one of my questions, was like, the girls are obviously not supposed to be like cut or anything before they go through that like blood purity ritual. But up until then, like they're probably still gonna get their period. So how does that work? But apparently this Britta girl started seeing her blood turning gold, and then her parents like knew, and they like gave her the lady to be like trained in the demon army. So they've had a very different upbringing, but so far they're giving best friend vibes, and I'm really here for that. That's literally all that's happened. This book is just kind of like really weird and confusing, and I'm just suspending a lot of disbelief because I have no idea how this world works. Like I really do not understand it. You're literally just thrown into it, and I'm a little lost. So I'm really excited to see like what this holds, but 10% in, I still feel like I have no idea how this book is going. I don't really understand the whole plot of this, but I'm just along for the ride. And so far I'm enjoying it, and hopefully I can get like at least 50% in the next couple of days or so, because I've been in a reading slump from a different book I'm reading that I don't want to read. So I might just switch to this one for a hot minute. So I'll let y'all know. So I wanted to update you guys at the 50% mark, but I forgot to film. So here we are at the 75% mark, and definitely a lot more has happened. I feel like up to the 50% mark, not a whole lot happens and not a whole lot is explained to this world building. It's a very confusing world, but I am like low-key enjoying it. And especially past the 50% mark, it's getting fucking juicy. So in this world, women with gold blood are demons, and we don't really know like how they came to be. They just think that they were descended from the Gilded ones, and they are now recruited to fight in like the Emperor's army against these things called death streaks. And the death streaks are just like ravaging the homelands. They're ravaging every province. They're fucking up everybody, okay? And they don't really know anything about death streaks other than like they shriek and they can like kill people with like the sound from their shrieking, okay? So people in the army wear like, what are they called? the hat things. A hood, a hat, armor. I don't know what I'm looking for. They wear that to cover their ears, okay? When they go into like battle, they wear like a thing, you know what I'm saying? God, it's been a long day. So all of these women have now been like recruited to fight against the death streaks because they are stronger and better than everybody else, and they can die multiple times and come back. These demon women have a few different ways they can die, and until you find like your death, like you're not gonna die. Like not everybody dies by beheading, a lot of them don't. Like our main character Decca, like they tried killing her in like every which way, and she survived I think 9 times through all the different dismemberings, beheadings, etc. She like regenerates. That's why these demon women are so valuable to the Emperor, and we're finding out more about them as we go along, because in the beginning it's just kind of weird, and they all like shave their heads and they all live together and they're kind of just training, and we have a couple of good friend groups like popping up, okay? And then each girl is paired with a dude who is just like a soldier, and I can't remember the word for it, but they're like paired, they're like bonded, they're like partnered, they like pledge their lives to one another, even though all these men are like terrified of these really strong ass women, because the demon women are badass, okay? Like they can even go into like, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a certain mode where they're like very overly focused. It's called like fighting or battle mode or whatever, and like the world kind of gets like quiet and like slower for them, and they can just like focus on stuff, and they can train harder than anybody else. It's a very interesting world, and I don't truly understand it yet. We're finding out more about Decca and her heritage, because Decca's mom was like a shadow, so she was like a spy for the Emperor, and we end up finding her like in this book, and in the book it has her like named, but then it says that she basically leaves, and she leaves before Decca is born, because she was originally supposed to leave because she was already with child, but Decca's birthday does not line up with that, so she's like, well, that dude is not my father then. Who is my father? Why do I have these special abilities? There's a whole lot going here. There's a whole lot to unpack in terms of that. Also, I think it's really interesting that both the books I read for this reading vlog, which I did not plan at all, has something to do with like their mothers, like their mother's heritage and lineage, and we're trying to find out like what happened with their moms, because their moms are like no longer with us. Did not see that coming about, but they connect. And now at the 75% mark, like they are going into battle and stuff, and we're finding out so many interesting things about the death streaks themselves. Like I wanted to stay up last night and read, and I just had to tell myself no. Like I needed to, number one, tell you guys a little about this book before I fucking finish it, and number two, like I need to go to bed because I had a long day today. There's a lot of really fun stuff going on, because I was a little bit worried in the beginning like where this book was going, and I still don't kind of know where it's going. I don't understand a lot about this world. I'm just kind of like taking it all in and suspending any disbelief that I have. There's not a whole lot of like disbelief. It's just more of like, I don't understand how this world works yet. I don't understand why it works this way, so we're gonna figure it out, I'm assuming. We're also finding out that Decca has some like cool abilities, and she's like unnatural even compared to the other like demon warrior women, so that's really fun to explore. And I don't want to ruin anything, but I definitely will have a spoiler section at the end for this book. I feel like this book is less complicated than Legendborn, and not in like this book is so simple type of way. I just feel like it's a little bit easier to explain, but I need to do that all through spoilers, so I will spoil it a little bit later on. It's not my favorite world or anything. I definitely don't want to like live in this world, but I have enjoyed the ride, or I am enjoying it now. Like I wasn't loving it in the beginning. I was very lost, but now it's like getting traction. So anyway, I'll fill you guys in when I finish the book, which should hopefully be in the next like 2 to 3 days. I would like to finish it by like tomorrow, but like reading 25% of a book in one night is not always reasonable for me, especially when I'm really tired after work, and I have a whole ass dinner to still cook, and I just got a book from the library that I've been waiting for that is like 700 pages. So what am I gonna read first? I don't know. So it is now December, and I ended up finishing the Gilded ones last month in November. I am going to spoil this book with spoilers in just a moment, but as a spoiler-free synopsis, I really liked this book up until about the 80% mark, where a few plot twists came into account, and they kind of invalidated the rest of the novel and left searing plot holes. In this book's favor, it was a 400-page book and did not read as such. It was very fast-paced and really easy to get through and did not feel that long. And I also really enjoyed the feminism and the found family, but the other aspects of this book worked against those things that I enjoyed. There were a lot of frequent time jumps, and I felt that it left our characters completely underdeveloped, as well as this world. Nothing is really truly explained. We don't really get the culture. Things like food, music. I mean, we get a little bit of the climate, but that's pretty much it, especially because this is a very large continent. I was expecting a lot more in terms of world building, and some world building came in at the end, but then it invalidated the rest of the book, in my opinion. Like, it just didn't really make sense. It's one of those worlds that you don't understand anything until the very end, and then I still had more questions because it just didn't make sense for the story. There was also no relationship development between our main characters because there were so many frequent time jumps, and after like a few weeks of training, we're supposed to expect that these women are now like severe warriors. That just didn't really check out. Like, there was a lot of things that just didn't make a whole lot of sense, and I was just trying to suspend my disbelief, but we didn't get to see their training and such. We didn't get to see them mold into these warriors, and all of a sudden they're like going on special missions. It was just a little jarring, and the world building felt very clunky and just overly confusing. I think overall the atmosphere was lacking. Like, I just really had a hard time picturing this book. I just kept picturing like the desert of the Lion King. Like, that's literally how I kept picturing this book, because that's like the only descriptions that I was getting. So I don't understand the food, I don't understand the culture, I don't understand any other aspects of this, other than apparently the entire continent like worships the same religion, which I also find a little shocking. Now, if it was like the main religion, that's different, but it seems to be like pretty much the only religion. So that was also a little like weird. So overall, this book's gonna get 3 stars out of me. And I do want to continue on in the series, but I'm definitely not as excited as I was when I was reading like the first half of the book, because I just don't really know where they're gonna go from here. I mean, hopefully they're gonna explain some of the intricacies in the first book that were overlooked, in my opinion. And I think I was also a little bit let down because I did really love Legendborn and gave it 5 stars. And it was like a very fleshed out world for me. And if you're giving me such an off the wall concept as this, like, I just need a little bit more backstory. Anyway, if you don't want to be spoiled for this book, please click off. I'm gonna go ahead and put some spoilers up in this bitch, and we're gonna get down to why the ending of this book kind of ruined it for me. So our main character Decca begins to find out that she can understand death shrieks, and the death shrieks are like, why is she hurting us? She's like related to us. Why is she doing this? Apparently the Alaki women, when they find their ultimate death, become death shrieks. That's like their ascended like true ultimate form, and death shrieks are basically goddesses, and they used to rule this continent slash world. And then like the men, they are the ones who like enslaved them and like had us fight against death shrieks. So that wasn't truly explained. But White Hands herself is also like a goddess warrior, but it doesn't make sense why White Hands would be creating a warrior army where they are literally eradicating death shrieks. Like, the whole point of these like elite warrior women is to kill the death shrieks. Like, you're actually murdering these people. They're not coming back. They're not like Alaki women who are now becoming more death shrieks and you're like building a secret army. It just doesn't really make any sense. Like, why would you encourage the hurting of your true people? And of course, our main character Decca is like the chosen one. She was literally chosen in like a pool of sperm or whatever and put inside of her mother. It just really makes me upset. Like, why would White Hands be working for the Emperor, who's her cousin, and be creating an army that's murdering death shrieks? If you've been doing this for years, like, you've eradicated thousands of your own people. I'm lost here. Like, it's mass genocide, and yet you're on their side. I'm like ultimately so confused. It's not like they're going to like these raids and like pretending to kill them and like recruiting them or something. They're like actually murdering death shrieks. They're murdering them. They're murdering these like goddess women. I'm so confused. So that's like the basis of this ending. We find out that they have like enslaved women and we're fighting against them the entire time. It seems like an ultimate feminism kind of story, which is fine. Again, I just don't understand why there's like been mass genocide going on. So anyway, even after a very confusing ending, I still enjoyed the Gilded ones. It was good. It's gonna get 3 stars out of me. It could have got a lot higher if the ending was a little more believable, and I still will go ahead and give the second one a shot, but I'm definitely not as excited for it as I was. I actually started this like way back in like, I think it was like July or August, so thank you for sticking with me. And I'm gonna thank me for sticking with me, because I really need to be better about finishing these books in a more timely manner. I would like to finish books at least in the same month, but life doesn't always work out that way. Anywho, if you guys have any books that you guys would like me to read, go ahead and drop them down below, and I'll put them on my list for 2024. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a lovely day.